Hey guys, and welcome back to the Zenith Blonde Porthole Restoration Project. Let me start off by saying you guys crack me up. When I shotgun replace all the vintage caps with new ones, I get heat from some viewers saying that's sacrilege, I have to retain the original look. However, when I propose restuffing them and retaining the original look, I get comments saying that's a ridiculous waste of time, nobody cares, nobody looks underneath the chassis. I can't win with everybody is what I'm getting at. But let me try to address it a little bit. Yes, of course, to make it work, you can just put in the new caps. It doesn't matter electrically. Cosmetically, no. Very few people, if anybody's ever going to look underneath the chassis. So why would you do it? One, the challenge of doing it comes more from the radio world, because with the radios there's fewer caps, sometimes they're more visible, and it's just kind of what people have done for decades when restoring vintage radios, like with Philco Bakelite block capacitors. They're relatively easy to restuff, so people do it. And I cut my teeth doing radios, then I moved into TVs, so I still want to restuff now and then. And also, especially when it's a set like this that is underneath all original. It'll never be original again. And if I do anything to it, it's not going to be original anymore. I get that. But I thought I would at least make the attempt, okay? But that's not what I'm going to do right now. What I'm going to do right now is clean it. I hope there's no controversy about that. Yes, I'm going to remove the original patina and dirt that's on it. Why? Again, because I can, and this is my set. Most of what I work on are customer sets, at least for the last 5+ years. This is mine. So I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and I want to clean it. So that's what I'm going to start with. And then I'll proceed to testing the tubes. Now, something else what I propose doing, because again, it's my set, I have a little bit more leeway with what exactly I do with it, in terms of I might leave some of the original caps in. Like, I'll attempt to reform the electrolytics on this chassis. I already know on the main power supply they've leaked, they gotta go. And same with the paper caps. I mean, we don't necessarily have to replace all of them if they're a coupling cap and there's not much DC voltage across them. They might still work well enough. Same with the resistors. If they're 20, 30, 40% of the spec, but the set still works okay, I'll leave them in. In other words, I'm going to try to do as little as possible, get a decent image out of it, and when I watch it, I'll keep an eye on it. And if I leave the room, I'll turn it off. That kind of thing. What I'm getting at is I want to try to do as little as possible in terms of just ripping out all the old electronics out of it. I'm going to try to use as many tubes as possible that are in it, and just do a little bit of cleaning. So, cleaning. Probably you've heard me talk about this before. CLR does a phenomenal job of cleaning. It removes cadmium corrosion, leaves the metal looking real shiny. This is a fantastic candidate for that. So that's what I want to do. Also, while I'm cleaning, I get a chance to examine everything, look for any problems, frayed wiring, wrong tubes and sockets, and, you know, stuff like that. So, let's get to it. Well, I've been making some progress with cleaning. I started out with the tuner housing, and I also pulled out all the tubes, cleaned the CRT a little bit, and check out what I discovered. No, not 100% all Zenith, but mostly Zenith. And I believe the different colors are representative of different times of replacement versus original. So the white ones, I'm sure, are original because they're dated from 1948. 948. Whereas the yellow and the red, for sure, like this one, is much newer. It's a different style. It's a 5V4. But it's still Zenith. It says replace only with a genuine Zenith tube, as does this guy. I'm not sure about these date codes, or if those even are date codes, because they don't make any sense to me. So I'm not sure quite when they're from. But hey, it's pretty cool, I think. I've never seen so many Zenith tubes all at once in one place. Not that Zenith made them, I know, but they're Zenith branded, and it just lends a little bit of extra coolness to this set, I think. I also noticed something else. I noticed the band is a little crooked here. And I also noticed that the CRT is not touching these rubber support pieces. I think the CRT needs to be shoved back about a quarter of an inch. That would straighten this band out, and it would mean it was resting against that. It's a replacement CRT, we know that. When they replaced it, I don't know, maybe they pushed it forward because they wanted it to meet up with the mask in the front. And keep in mind, manufacturing tolerances back then were not perfect, and especially if it was rebuilt, the length of the neck could change a little bit, so maybe it needed to be here to get the best picture, or to meet up with the front of the cabinet the best, but it seems to me that it's not quite right, so we'll see how it goes. For now, I'm just going to leave it alone, but it sure seems to me like that's not right. This is supposed to be touching the glass, and I don't think these really shrunk any. I mean, got a bit harder. They're rubber, but yeah. Anyways, so I'm going to proceed with cleaning. I'm using CLR and Windex CLR on the corroded cadmium, like down here. It does a fantastic job. Got nice that tuner cover turned out. This should all clean up beautifully. This is aluminum, just the Windex on that is enough to clean up the tops. This one is quite loose. I'm not sure what's going on with that. And it's got a green blob on it, so maybe it was an old repair. It seems unlikely though, because these really don't go bad, so I don't know. But anyways, I'll keep on with the cleaning and see how it goes. I'm going through and testing the tubes now, and much as I want to keep all the Zenith branded tubes, at least this one is just a little too flaky. It's a 6AU6, and it's showing very strong intermittent shorts, so it's got to go. As bad as the previous tube was, this one is even worse. That was a 6AU6, this is a 6AG5, and we have multiple shorts. In the end, I weeded out 4 tubes that I'll be replacing because they had shorts or were really, really deep into the red with bad emissions. Alright. On the main chassis, I am replacing the obviously bad power resistors. These are all open. They're not just I'm not replacing just because they look crummy. They're open. So there's the first new old power resistor. Got to put another one down in here, and I'm being reminded too that there are some oddball components in this. So I think I mentioned earlier about some of these caps, like that guy and that guy, are paper caps hiding inside of a mica mold enclosure. There's also that goofy thing, which I gotta double check and see, is that a resistor or is that a capacitor? I think it's a resistor. It looks like it's 470. I also notice it's very corroded above that area. I don't know if that's because of heat. Although you'd think heat would keep it dry and not corroded, but yeah, that's where this big guy was situated, in that area. And then we got this one too, so there's a lot of heat in that area. And what's on the other side is the And a horizontal oscillator tube or something like that. Or, yeah, in that socket there. Also a lot of dirt and debris. I thought maybe it was a horizontal output tube or damper tube, but no, those are up here. So, yeah. Oh well. I don't think I'm going to be getting in there with navel jelly and trying to remove it. Just leave it alone. I was saying that this is all original. That, I'm pretty sure, is a replacement. I'll have to look up what the exact value is. There's a 4500 and then parallel with a 39K, and it's on leads. I don't think the factory would have built it quite like that. Also wasn't entirely sure about this guy because it was so crummy looking. Because when I look at the parts locator, some of these are not the same. So this resistor, they show coming at a right angle off from the chassis, but in mine it was mounted on a terminal strip like so, whereas the Sam's is showing it up here. And it's kind of odd the way it was attached to this terminal strip, but I can compare it to the other one I worked on, which I think was the same way. So, you know, Sam's would just buy a set and then reverse engineer it, and this Sam's covers, well, these models and even more, because this is actually a 27F20 chassis, I think. A little hard to see that label up there, which is actually not listed on the chassis that the Sam's covers, so I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Yeah, they have 28F chassis, but this is a 27F20. However, I looked it up in Riders and they show the same chassis for both the 27 and 28 series, so I don't know. I'm questioning everything and double checking everything before I replace stuff to make sure it's right. So let's look up this guy. Kind of cut off here. I guess that would be R117, which they show as a sand-coated resistor with a part number stamped on it. And let's see, what's the value of R117? $2.5K. Huh. 4,500 with 39,000 in series does not equal 2.5K. This is what I mean about double checking or questioning everything. Now I gotta go check the Riders and see what they show for this resistor. Here's a little update for you guys. I've been going through and installing the new power resistors. And yes, there's one new yellow cap in there that's replacing this guy, which is a paper cap hiding inside of Bakelite molding that I can't really restuff. So yes, I'm already compromising my original goal for now, but I'm going to hang on to all these parts and we'll see where things take us. Now this guy, the Sam's, I won't say the Sam's is wrong, but the Sam's covers a bunch of different models. And actually the chassis I have isn't included in the list. I have a 27F20, whereas this covers 28F20, 28F20Z, F21, F22. I don't think they have one for the 27F20. And in the Riders, it's also lumped in with a bunch of stuff. I get the impression that the 27F20 wasn't used very much or for very long. And it's awfully close to the 28F20. But one difference, actually, the 28F20 and 27F20 both use a 4K here. Not the, what is it, 10K I think that this shows. So that's why I will warn you. People ask me for, oh, do you have a BOM? Do you have a parts list so I can order up stuff? Sometimes, especially if I'm at work and I've got some time on my hands, like I'm doing some lengthy compilation or something on code I'm working on, and I know I have an upcoming project, I'll look at the Sam's and I'll work up an order without having the chassis in front of me. I've been burned by that more than once. where I order up the wrong parts because I have a variation, I have a production run change, whatever, or there's just a flat out a mistake in the SAMs. So this is actually pretty darn close. They put a 4500 in series with a 39K. I do have a 4K on hand, but it's a bit higher wattage, and it's the more modern type rather than the brown, but in a pinch I could use it. But this actually I think is still okay. I've measured it in circuit, and it's pretty close. I have to remove an end to make absolutely sure. Which I think just leaves that guy, the chassis mount one. So here's what I propose doing. I'm going to double check that that one's okay, and if it's not, I'll replace it. It's similar with that guy. And the few I snipped out while I was experimenting, so I clipped out this one because it had already shattered. So I got to replace that white cap, and this one I clipped out again while I was talking about them. So I got to replace those. Then I want to do a little work on the power supply, and then I want to try to power ring this up. I also weeded out those tubes that were dead shorted. I got to replace those. In other words, I do plan to stick with my one of my goals, which is to do as little as possible to get this playing fairly well, and then I'll keep an eye on it. Here are the crummy power resistors I've removed. Now, something else, tubes. I was posting about this on the Antique Radio forum, and somebody educated me on how to read the date codes on some of these that weren't at all obvious to me. So I was reading these, so left to right, top to bottom. So this one says 39, 12, 26. You realize you're supposed to read them vertically. Come on, focus. So that is actually, read on the left side, 312. That's the manufacturer code. It was made by Sylvania. On the other side, we have 926. That's the 26th week of 1949. So these yellow tubes are originals, along with the whites. They all have 1949 date codes. The newer one, obviously this is a much newer type. Also 312, also Sylvania. But notice it has an 8 with an underscore, then 13. That means it's 1958, not 48, in the 13th week. So this set was about 10 years old when this tube was installed, or later. I mean, we don't know exactly when this tube was put into it, but this tube was made 10 years after the set was made. And we know the picture tube has been replaced, which makes me think maybe somebody was using this for 10 or more years, which is remarkable that if all they had to do was replace one, maybe one or two other power resistors, a new picture tube, and a few tubes, and the rest of it held up fairly well, that's impressive. I mean, yeah, we've seen some caps that had bulged and shattered and cracked, but this was, I think, was a well-used set. Cleaning is coming along fine. I'm taking a break from that. What I really need to do is remove the CRT so I can clean off this melted gunk and clean under here more easily. Switching gears now a bit in preparation to try a power-up. Now, one thing I'd really like to do is pin down the service info, which is proving to be a little bit problematic. See, as soon as I posted photos the day I got this set, people chimed in that had the same model, or so it seemed, and said, hey, nice model 28 T960. So I assume that's what it was. It certainly looks like that on the cover of the SAMs, until I looked at the chassis and saw the tag that says 27F20. This covers 28F20, which is not quite the same. Tube layout's a little bit different. Has a different sync circuit in particular, and some other minor differences. Okay, great. Let's look up the 27F20. Well, not so easy to do. I don't know that Sam's ever covered it. It is in Riders Volume 3, but it's combined with the 28F20 and a few others. At least we have the tube chart, and they do mention, in fact, they even say 27F20 is similar to 28F20 except for the sync separator. Instead of a 6, they use 6. And a 6SH7, it uses a dual triode 6SN7, and they list some other differences. Okay, well, on the prior page of this, they also list all the models and the various chassis that they use. And there's only one model they list that uses the 27F20, and that's a mahogany console, not a blonde. So I'm still not entirely sure. So here's the other weird thing. There is no tube chart inside the cabinet. There's no indication. There's no glue mark. There's no shadow of one. It's just pristine all around inside. So, and there's nothing on the back of the metal back of the set. Nothing. That's really unusual because you imagine the poor owner of this said, "Hey, a tube's gone out. I need to replace it or whatever." There's always a tube chart. I'm confused, to put it mildly. And here is the cabinet. Normally there'd be a label right there or right there. Yeah, often they fall off, but you'd see the glue marks of where it used to be. Nothing down there. Nothing over here. We do get a little bit of some clues, though, about the finish, though. Obviously, they painted this whole thing inside and out with this sort of pale yellow finish. So, I honestly, since blondes are far less common than mahogany, I think they may have just pulled a mahogany model off the assembly line, like this, so that it has the 27F20, and just painted the yellow over the thing, and then clear coated over that. Because underneath is where it's worn through, it is a reddish brown mahogany veneer. So maybe they had a rush, and there was this, they just had to get a blonde set out, so they grabbed the mahogany set and made it into a blonde. And why there's no label on it, I don't know. Maybe it was a custom model. Maybe it was a prototype. We'll never know. Unless maybe I hear from some other folks that have this exact model and can shed a little light on what the situation might be. So it's especially problematic because of the power resistors, because they're so deteriorated I can't read anything on them, and they're open. So how am I supposed to know what, you know, 'cause one rule of thumb is, well, just go with what you see. Forget about the SAMs because I might have mistakes or whatever. But when the original part is obliterated and I can't read the value and I can't measure the value, I got to go buy something. Anyways, while we're looking here, we can also see this gasket. It's not only deteriorated around the CRT mounting gasket, it's also or mounting band, but it's also very deteriorated inside the cabinet. I suppose we'll just chip away all this crud. I don't know. I don't really know that I need to replace it with anything. Maybe a little bit of foam, just so this glass doesn't smash into this up front here. I repopulated all the tubes on the main chassis. Now I'm taking a look at the power supply. As you recall, this cap had vented. These power resistors are looking a little iffy. For sure, I'm going to replace that before we try powering it up. I believe that is right after the power transformer. Take a look at my schematic here. And I think that's a 15 microfarad. They actually have a couple caps doubled up there. But yeah, two of these two guys, it's just a single cap inside that, and they're cardboard covered and isolated from the chassis. And then we got this dual guy over there. So at the very least, I want to replace that before I try powering it up. I know I've been talking a lot about it, restuffing and whatnot. What I'm going to do for these is carefully untwist the twist locks and remove them. My hope is that I can get the cardboard covers off and hide the new caps underneath. Sometimes these are easy to come off, sometimes not. And that one's already in kind of crummy condition. So I started poking around underneath the power supply, looking at my Sam's part locator. Not much to it, right? 2 tubes, 3 caps, 1 power resistor. But I have 2. I just clipped this one out, and then there's this guy. So what's going on? Well, I once again dug into riders and found the scant 27F20 service info. I got this 1-page schematic that's super tiny and hard to read. Well, if you look down at the power supply, it's a little inset in the upper right. So that's what I have. So not only do I have an uncommon chassis, I have an uncommon variation of the power supply for the uncommon chassis. So mine matches a little inset, and it looks like that's supposed to be a 33 ohm resistor. And again, back to my problem of, I can't read that. And even if I could, I think it just has a Zenith part number on it. And it's, and at least this one isn't open. But it's not 33, it's more like 45. But I think that's what we've got, and that's a 10 ohm resistor. Well, moving on. I did unmount these 2 caps. This is the one that vented, and this is one next to it that was looking pretty crummy. And they're each just a single cap. This is 40 microfarad 400 volts, and this is, I think, 18 microfarad at 250, or 15 microfarad at 250. But they are marked Zenith, so I will endeavor to reuse these. So, yeah, I could cut these open and recap them, but reuse these cans. However, these cardboard covers go down and cover the entire cap. So I really don't see any reason to try to cut this open, restuff it, reuse the lugs, when there's only a single section, there's only one lug being used, and it's completely encased in cardboard. No, what I think I'll do is take an Adaptacap, mount my 1 cap on there, and just hide it like so. There. Pretend the cap is mounted on that, and we'll do something like that. So how did I get this off? Well, you see there's tar that was holding it on. I had to heat it up. That's why I have this heat gun out here. I'm endeavoring to do the same thing on this guy. This one came off pretty easy. It didn't need a whole lot of heat. This one's proven to be a little bit more stubborn. You don't want to get it too hot. I got this on low, so it's not, I don't want to burn myself unless I hold my hand over it for a long time. You don't want to squish the paper, is what I'm getting at. As it gets a little bit warmer, a little bit uncomfortable, so we can switch to some needle nose pliers. It's hard to say exactly where the tar blob is. Sometimes it's just all at the end. In this case, it was around the sides and at the end, so I'm just kind of heating the whole thing overall. See, the problem with doing this is cardboard is, well, an insulator, and it's tough to get the heat through the cardboard to heat up the tar underneath. The only bit of metal that's exposed is on the bottom, and the tar is probably on the opposite side. So this can take some while. I urge caution and patience. Don't put this heat gun on high and put this right above it to speed it up, because you're going to char the cardboard. Slow, take your time. Put it in your toaster oven or a regular oven that you don't mind using. Put it on low, like 175 or something, and put them in for a while. Then what you want to do is grab a hold of the lugs. As I mentioned, I don't like doing this very much. Yet another reason why. It's really time consuming. There's also no guarantee I'm going to succeed. This one's kind of deteriorated as it is. Well, I'm going to keep at it. I'll get there eventually, I hope. Finally got it. There was a lot of tar inside there. And there still is quite a bit in there. But I got it off. So we can reuse those two covers. Now I had a choice. I didn't have to drill out the old phenolic mounting plates. This one, though, is a bit messed up from the cap that oozed its insides out. So I opted to take them out. Plus, this was rather corroded. And Naval Joey took care of that. I still have some work to do over there. So I'll use adapter-caps, and they will go on like so. I'll use little cap head screws to hold them down, or I could use rivets too, but I'll go with the cap head screws. Now, how am I going to hold these on? That's the least of my concerns. I could stuff a little bit of styrofoam or just some wadding. It just needs to put a little bit of pressure between the body of that cap and this. I don't want to glue it down because I want to be able to take this off again in case this ever needs to be serviced. But there we go. Which of course leaves this guy. Now this one I would need to cut open if I wanted to restuff it. I'm going to try to reform this guy though. These are the two that take the brunt right off of the power transformer. There's two caps in here, 100 microfarad and I think a 40 at 475 volts. So we'll see. If I need to, if I was going to cut this open, what I have done is I cut it right at the seam here. Even just a really sharp utility knife. Go back and forth a little bit. Or a mini hacksaw, or a Dremel, or a pipe cutter. There's lots of ways to cut these open, but ideally if you cut it right along here, you can put it back on and a variety of things, JB Weld epoxy, to re-secure this. Let's talk about service info again briefly. I do have the Wallace Tellier, which covers allegedly every model from 47 to 53, and on the inside they list all the models and all the chassis. And 27F20, just a single model, the Broadmoor 2017 965R, which is not what I have. By all indications, with the cabinet style and all that, what I have, I believe, is the Waldorf, the 2018 960. They don't tell the cabinet versions in this, but they do in other service info I have, well, namely the riders. But anyway, we know we have a 27F20 chassis, and it's covered on pages 13 to 15, and it's a little bit larger and easier to read than what I found in the riders. Now this is a variation that I do not have. This is what I have, 27F20. There's the power supply. There's a 33 ohm resistor that I didn't know that I would need. So for now, I'll have to go with this modern one. I do have a vintagey 10 ohm resistor at least. I'll dig up something. If I have to, I'll order a vitreous enamel. They still make those. 33 ohm resistor. I'm not going to place an order with Mauser just for one resistor, so we're going to carry on with that. Once I install those 2 resistors, this will be good to go for at least for an attempt to form this guy up. Or I could hook up an external power supply and monitor the current, but yeah. I've got to replace 2 caps that I clipped out while I was experimenting with restuffing bumblebees, and then we can plug the 2 together and give it a whirl.